A man's life is really the journey of accepting himself. See, a lot of ambitious men were extremely competent and we rely on our competency. And what we'll do is, and a lot of us were taught this, is that we'll focus on the things that allow our competency to shine. We're very work driven, career driven, very ambitious, spirit of entrepreneurs, and we'll lean into, our hustles. Not really our passions, but our hustles. Make money, grind, our businesses, whatever it is, sales, whatever it is. And we tend to put off life. We tend to put off living life. You may find yourself restless, constantly feeling behind, constantly feeling under pressure. You know, you're doing all the work, you're making the more money, you have the physique, you have all these things going for you, but you still feel a gap. You still feel some hollowness inside of you. And, you know, your lifestyle is misaligned with who you were meant to be. And the reason I bring this up is because we're talking about acceptance today. And we're going to talk about how our journey as men is about acceptance. And it's really about accepting who the Most High made us to be, who we were meant to be. And we use all these avenues, you know, as ways to perform because we're competent instead of ways to express. You know, you may find yourself after working all the time, obviously you're drained, but it's almost like a drain of like, god damn, when is this ever gonna end? Like, when am I gonna finally be able to take a break? When am I gonna finally feel like I've done enough? When am I gonna finally be enough? And you see, subconsciously, we're trying to outwork a nervous system that holds the beliefs that we ain't shit without money, that we ain't shit without having material in this life. So we lean into our competency to hide from who we really are. We may experience wins, but we never actually acknowledge the wins. The way we criticize ourselves, our inner judge, our inner critic is so demanding of us. Our expectations is so demanding of us that a win doesn't even feel like a win. We may say shit like, man, I already knew I could fucking do it. What the fuck's the point? But a loss, bruh, a loss have you crashing the fuck up. What the fuck, bro? I should have been able to fucking do this. This shit is unacceptable. Just start talking to yourself fucking crazy, you know. I recently gone through this because I've been having a tough time approaching. Of course, it's always fucking approaching, y'all. But just more lately than usual. And the beauty about it is that I've had to learn how to accept certain parts of me because I was questioning, why the fuck do I get so nervous when I go out approaching? And it's really just initiating with strangers. And that's not to say I'm bad and that I don't fucking let my nuts hang, when I'm out there. Pause. But for real, it's just that when your nervous system remembers memories where you may have been rejected, you may have been, you know, exposed or feel exposed, your body will shut you down, right? That's not the point of today's video. Point is, we're constantly moving, we're constantly building, but we never feel enough. We never feel enough. And like I said earlier, like, we have these high standards for ourselves and we may be able to even show grace for others. And I'll ask you this question: the way you talk to yourself when you're struggling, would you talk to someone else like that? Would you talk to your closest brother like that? Would you talk to your closest friend like that? If he's doubting himself, wouldn't you remind him of all the great things he's done? Yet, how come you can't extend that same grace to you? And the truth is because you hate yourself. A part of you hates yourself. And you haven't been honest with yourself about accepting, the good and the bad of you. You'd rather overlook it. You'd rather suppress it. You'd rather not even pay attention to it, because paying attention to it reminds you of how much you hate yourself. So what you do is you try to outwork that hate. You try to outwork those emotions, that trauma um, that you're storing in your nervous system, and you can't do it. It always ends up showing up. Shows up as restlessness. It shows up as thoughts of inadequacy. It shows up, in relationships. It shows up when you're trying to make income. It keeps you stuck in life. How can you have any more capacity from your nervous system if you're living with all this tension? And the body is very revealing. A lot of you may walk around slouched like this, have scoliosis, have all types of bodily injuries. And it's because you're carrying all this tension that you haven't dealt with. You ignore those thoughts of inadequacy, you ignore those signals, and your body will show it. Your body will show it. When you watch a lot of these cartoons, you'll see images of, the a lot of these uglier cartoon characters. They're always hunchback. They're always walking around hunchback, and what you'll find with those characters is that their posture is a symptom of all the emotions and all the lack of self acceptance. When someone's posture is turned in, it's because they don't express themselves. You have to give your soul space to breathe. And when you're constantly tense, it's gonna tighten up your chest muscles. It's gonna collapse your posture. You don't express yourself. You see? So you could even go work out and try to fix the muscles, and but because you find yourself so performative, you find yourself with a mask, you don't really know who you are. And like I said, it transfers over to every sector of your life. In relationships, you're gonna fear vulnerability. You're gonna fear being able to open up to other women and being able to trust them, because I'm sure your ass has been around the red pill space. You may even be a low-key womanizer and you don't even fucking know it. Shit, I fell into that trap. With your business or sales, you'll find yourself fucking rejecting clients. You won't follow up because following up is going to require you to put your pride aside and ask again for the sale after being rejected. You know what I mean? With you know it applies to everywhere. It applies to everywhere. Like, the more expressive you are, the easier things become for you because you are aligned. We have to learn how to accept ourselves. And I think I mentioned before, one of my favorite scenes is Kung Fu Panda. I kid you not. Because he opens a dragon warrior scroll, he looks at his reflection, and he realizes he was always the dragon warrior. And the key to this, when you're spiraling, when you're crashing out, is to how quickly can you remember who you are? How quickly can you remember who you're meant to be? That is what's going to get you through the hard times. That's what's going to get you to stop self sabotaging. But it's very uncomfortable to tell yourself how great you are, because your mind is looking for a story to keep you victimized. Let's be real, a lot of us are competent because we were insecure, because we came from lack. So what do? We overcompensated. We didn't want to be seen as weak. So you'd probably tell yourself, this will never happen again. I got friend zoned once in middle school, and I became a villain after that. And it's affected me ever since. I became a motherfucking villain, and now, I walk in the scriptures. I cannot, be out here busting nuts everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, I can't be out here a dog. I gotta move decently and in order. And so now with lust, those temptations of lust, I have to mitigate them. I don't really fall into them, and I say all praises to the Most High for it, because it was the struggle that I had for a long time. But a part of that was because I hated myself, and the lust, specifically porn, would feed into my own loneliness, would feed into that defeated state, because I'd find myself very defeated, very apathetic. Nothing matter. I'm not enough. So what the fucking matter if I bust a nut? And the demons, spirits will play off that. They'll play off that defeated state, and you're wasting energy, and you're probably fighting yourself because you want to stop doing it. We've all ran into that fucking pattern. It's just that nobody really talks about it, you know. But I'm there to say that, I'm a testimony, and I probably will testify when I start doing my Identity Rewire series, that a lot of the times we do certain things for relief because we're running away from ourselves. And I implore you today to really look within and realize, really recognize yourself. I've touched on another video before, the power of self-recognition. The more you acknowledge your wins, the greater your self-belief becomes, the greater your self-trust becomes, because now you're realizing that you're moving with your word. Your word is moving reality, and you're actually keeping it. Your self-respect goes up, and when you're moving congruently, your presence changes rooms. You walk into rooms and men respect you more. You walk into room and women can feel you. It's not about like, all these gimmicks about looking good, or you could you could see a real ass dude when you see a real ass dude. Straight up. I know real when I see real. When I know someone's performing and they got the circus mask on and they don't want to be seen a certain way, I know that shit too. We're too competent for that shit. We're way too competent for that shit. And uh, women could read your bullshit too. Just FYI. But it's very hard for us to accept those parts of ourselves that are ugly. But I think it's even harder to accept those parts of ourselves that are more than exceptional. More than exceptional. It's very uncomfortable because then you have to stop becoming. There's no real timeline to maybe when you get the lifestyle that you've been building towards. You know, you have to stop becoming and realize that you are am. You know, scripture says, I am. And the reason the Most High said, I am, is because he was declaring, this is who I am. And a man has to do the same thing. I'm a man of faith. I'm a man of XYZ. This is who I am. This is not what I'm becoming. Of course, I become a higher version of myself, but that's just an amplification of my spirit. It's an amplification of who I am. And as I travel through the different levels of life, my soul gains more room to breathe. My presence expands, and now I have to take up more space wherever I go. And eventually, my gravitation is going to be so massive. My pull is going to be so massive. I'm going to start attracting all the things that are meant for me. You see my point? Because now I'm moving in the frequency and vibration that the Most High is moving in, where He declares and He does. His word, it moves reality. But you cannot do that when you don't accept yourself. You cannot do that when you can't recognize yourself. You cannot do that when you can't self validate yourself. Anything that you don't do for yourself, you end up looking for elsewhere. And when you're looking for it elsewhere, you're going to find yourself looking for relief, because a part of you knows that you shouldn't be giving a fuck about other people's opinions. You shouldn't be looking for, when the results happen, when the outcomes happen, because none of that shit really matters. You're going to get it anyways. You're too competent to not. But are you actually open and receiving it? I guess no. No. You're too attached to the outcome. And again, you put off living life because you don't feel like enough to live life. So you feel like you have to overcompensate with work. You're overworked. You don't actually take breaks. And the same reason that you don't is the same reason that you can't lock in on the level that you want, or you can't get past a certain threshold, because you have no capacity. You have no nervous system capacity to do it, because the pressure that you're already the pressure that you're already feeding into yourself is fucking you up. Truth is, man's life is really about self-acceptance. Every time I've leveled up, I didn't learn new knowledge. I just realized what was within me. And I realized I am fucking him.